Hi, welcome to Fresh Faces New Ideas. My name's David. If you like this channel and want to stay up to date with what I do, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. Now, this video we're going to discuss what a mass shooting is, the actual definition of it. We're going to go over President Biden's speech about what he's doing about gun control, and we're going to talk about amendments because that came up as a false narrative to go against what he's saying. Specifically in America, we have had, let me see if I can find a past summary. Okay, so mass shootings. This says 417. Okay, I thought it was much less. We're going to have to figure that out. Number of incidents reported and verified. So that's 2. So this says 417. The last data I saw was 129. So why are we talking about mass shootings? Well, let's first discuss what a mass shooting is. A mass shooting is an incident involving multiple victims of gun violence. There's no widely accepted definition of the term mass shooting. The United States FBI allows the Investigative Assistance for Violent Crimes Act of 2012 definition for active shooter incidents and mass killings, defined by the law as 3 or more people in public places. Based on this, it is generally agreed that a mass shooting is whenever 3 or more people are shot, injured, or killed, not including the shooters. Okay? So generally 3 or more people who were shot in a single shooting. So yesterday, Joe Biden decided to take on mass shootings, or he's going to aim at gun control. Now let's be clear: 11,000 people have died. Or does this actually back this up? This is all causes. Okay, from at least 11,000 people have died from gun violence, not mass shootings. So we're going to go over this, and then I'm going to talk about some of the things he says in this and some of the arguments against this. And then we're going to go into a deep dive. What is that deep dive going to entitle? We're going to look at the myth of a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. Why are we looking at this? Because this is part of the NRA's argument. Speaking of the NRA, the president of them, because they're currently they're in a lawsuit, argued that he had to go to a super yacht because he was afraid of the backlash after, I believe it was Sandy Hook, which kind of seems crazy that the president of the NRA didn't just get a gun. That's what they tell us. Guns make you safer. Anyway, let's see what Joe Biden has to say about gun control. This does skip in between because it just hits the main points, but we'll go over it.
Taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis. Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about.
Now, let's be clear. The argument here is twofold. The argument is, the super disingenuous one is anything is approaching gun control as attempting to take your guns away. The other one is the rights of gun owners cannot be infringed, but it's the rights of a well-regulated militia. Also, the people who argue that, this is your rights cannot be infringed are the same people who say, no. We just have to go after the criminals and the people who are who have mental illness. How do you square that circle? How do you say there are some restrictions there, but you say there can't be other restrictions? Square that circle for me, because that's talking out of both sides of your mouth, and it doesn't make any sense because you're full of shit. Okay? What Joe Biden is about to show you, or tell you, is generally piecemeal. It is very, very light and may have zero impact, this particular part. There are bills that will do more, and there is a thing he's going to talk about that might actually help. The actual things he's talking about, these first 2, are not going to help much.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. We call it freedom of speech.
This is the other argument that they're going to have off of this. And I'm going to show you Laura Boebert's response to this specifically because it's either her or Dinesh D'Souza, and I want to make the distinction with Boebert. His argument here is there is no limitations. There is no absolute amendment. Like the First Amendment, you can't peddle advocate for violence. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. You just can't push certain things. There's limitations on the amendments. Okay, so this idea that any amendment is superseding or is infallible is just not true. Now, the perfect example of this is the 18th Amendment. I think it's the 18th. Whichever one was prohibition, which was then overturned by a future amendment. But let's continue.
From the very beginning, you couldn't own any weapon you wanted to own. From the very beginning that the Second Amendment existed, certain people weren't allowed to have weapons. So the idea is just bizarre to suggest that some of the things we're recommending are contrary to the Constitution. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic. Let me say it again. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic, and it's an international embarrassment.
There is no equivalent to the gun violence that faces Americans in any other country except for like Yemen and Syria, which are countries like in the middle of a civil war / proxy wars. That is the only equivalent to the amount of gun violence in America. But once again, we're number one. We're number one.
And today I'm announcing several initial steps my administration is taking to curb this epidemic of gun violence. Much more need be done, but the first, want to rein in the proliferation of so-called ghost guns. These are guns that are homemade, built from a kit, that include directions on how to finish the firearm. You can go buy the kit.
Yeah, this doesn't seem to be enough that this would be a huge thing, because there's just not enough data to show that these guns are a massive issue. It is a problem that people can just make their own guns because they're not registered, but it doesn't appear that these are a massive cause of the violence.
They have no serial numbers, so when they show up at a crime scene, they can't be traced. And the buyers aren't required to pass a background check to buy the kit. You know, I want to see these kits treated as firearms under the Gun Control Act, which is going to require that the seller and manufacturers make the key parts with serial numbers. The second action we're going to take, back in the year 2000, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms released a report on its investigations of firearms trafficking in America. The report was of pivotal value. It was an important tool for policymakers when I was in the Senate and beyond, at all levels, to stop firearms from being illegally diverted into dangerous hands. Today, with online sales and ghost guns, times and trafficking methods have changed, and we have to adjust. We also have to ask the Justice Department to release a new annual report. This report will better help policymakers address firearms trafficking as it is today.
This is good. This is more data is always better.
Not what it was yesterday. The third change, we want to treat pistols modified with stabilizing braces with the seriousness they deserve.
Now, modifying these, so my understanding of these are basically just like a piece of plastic that helps you aim better. And I don't know, I mean, that was done in one of the more recent shootings, so it's similar to bump stocks after the Vegas shooting, but I don't think it's a huge issue or something you regulate.
Modifications to firearms that make them more lethal should be subject to the National Firearms Act. The National Firearms Act requires that a potential owner pay $200 fee and submit their name and other identifying information to the Justice Department, just as they would if they went out and purchased a silencer for a gun. Fourthly, during my campaign for president, I wanted to make it easier for states to adopt extreme risk protection order laws. They're also called red flag laws, which everybody in this lawn knows, but many people listening do not know. These laws allow a police or family member to petition a court in their jurisdiction and say, I want you to temporarily remove from the following people any firearm they may possess.
Now, these laws were weakened under Donald Trump because one of the things he did was lessen the restrictions. So if you have somebody who the court has deemed is physically incapable of taking care of themselves or their finances, under Donald Trump, he allowed those people to be able to own a firearm. You can't take care of yourself and your money, but you can get a gun.
They're a danger and a crisis. They're presenting a danger to themselves and to others. Additionally, we recognize that cities across the country are experiencing historic spikes in homicides as the law enforcement.
Okay, so going back to the red flag laws. So the problem with the red flag laws, and I think he might go into this if he doesn't, it's in a longer clip. They're not universal. So one state's red flag laws could be separate from a different state's red flag laws. How long that gun is taken away, who has the right to take it, whether they have the right to lose the gun prior to an appeal in court. So there are more issues involved than just does a red flag law exist? So what he's either going to advocate for in this video or is advocating for in the longer clips is for a universal idea of what a red flag law should be to be adopted by states. They don't have to adopt it, but the goal is to have them adopt it because red flag laws do actually lower gun violence.
Tell you, the violence is hitting black and brown communities the hardest. Homicide is the leading cause of death of black boys and men ages 15 to 34. Gun violence in America, for those of you who think of this from an economic standpoint listening to me, estimated to cost the nation $280 billion, let me say it again, $280 billion a year. Finally, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the key agency enforcing gun laws, hasn't had a permanent director since 2015. Today, I'm proud to nominate.
Okay, so I don't know who the guy he's going to nominate for. The fact that it hasn't had a director since what do you say, 14, 15?
Hasn't had a permanent director since 2015.
Is pretty much on par for what the Trump administration was doing, where they didn't do anything. Although the last year of the Obama administration would be 2015, 2016. So they should have had a permanent director then, unless that was blocked by the Senate, which is a very high likelihood. But look, the whole point of this is the red flag law stuff is good. The other stuff doesn't appear to be consequential. Now, why is this important? Well, we're going to go look at Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert is a congresswoman. Her whole thing is guns. That's literally all she is. She's also objectively an idiot. So let's see at some of the things she responded to. First, there's this stupid argument. Handing the government more control is a recipe for starvation, disaster, and ultimately death of society. Sound dramatic? Ask the guy cooking his cat for dinner in Venezuela. Now, this is stupid for a couple reasons. One, the argument is always that if you allow for any type of expansion in government, we're going to be Venezuela. Regardless of all the other things that put Venezuela in the reason it is, America, the collapse of it as a petrostate, things like that. That's what caused, but giving them health care caused them to collapse. Like all the other oh no, every other country that had universal health care has not collapsed. Damn, if only you had thought about this argument. For starvation, Americans are starving. We have food deserts. This is not an issue. This should not be an issue. We have massive waste. This is incredibly stupid. So anyway, let's just go continue to some of the other things she said. So here's sadly where a sitting congresswoman doesn't understand the Constitution. She says, when Joe Biden says no constitutional amendment is absolute, where does that leave the 19th Amendment? Just curious if I'll be able to vote in the next election. Now, according to, I believe you, the U.S. Constitution should have never been changed in any way, shape, or form. It's either you or Marjorie Taylor Greene who said that. Based on your own stupidity, you wouldn't be able to vote under your own argument anyway. But we're going to get to amendments in a minute. Because guess what, class? We're going to learn some things today. And maybe we'll teach Ms. Boebert. Maybe she'll follow me and she'll see this video someday. And in this day in history, April 8th, 2021, Joe Biden stated no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. Yes, we know this. How do we know this? Amendments have changed. How does this change? You can change the Constitution. How does that happen? You amend the Constitution. There are two methods to that. One is Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislators of 2/3 of several states, call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid in all intended purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of several states, or by the convention for 3/4 therefore. So, what does this mean? The only way to propose an amendment is to have 3/4 of the Congress or the states decide that they want to do this. So, her argument is that because no amendment is absolute, you can just overturn them willy-nilly. That is almost impossible. There is no argument to say this. There's currently being a fight for constitutional amendments. There's always going to be calls for different ones. You cannot overturn an amendment. You have to create another amendment to overturn a previous one. The reason we will not have a convention is because of this fear of a runaway convention, even though that fear is not backed up in facts. That's why Wolfpack is just trying to put a constitutional amendment to take corporate money out of politics. So there's that. So, Warren Buffett, I'm an idiot. Big shocker there. Thanks for watching. If you like this content, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and that'll keep you up to date on all my stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.